Okay, today we have Karsten Muthreich, who is here with us and will be presenting on November 25th in our data monetization event. Karsten, thanks very much for joining us today. Karsten has a long...
Thank you.
excuse me. Karsten has a long experience in successful data management, 12 years at Johnson&Johnson, 17 years at British American Tobacco, and then he recently retired after 16 years at Nestlé World Headquarters, leading the data management team. Today, he consults under business-driven data management. He lectures at the University of Lausanne in Switzerland, and he's working now in a partnership with CDQ AG out of St. Gallen. Karsten, I'd like to actually start off with one point. While at Nestlé, you were part of some truly forward-thinking collaboration with several other large multinationals in a traditional competitive landscape. Can you tell me a little bit about that and the value realized?
Yes, Wade, thank you very much. And it's going back to, I think, 2010, when we had a workshop with the CDQ AG from St. Gallen, and we're sitting together after the workshop and discussing why are we all doing the same in terms of the management of business partner. And this was I think the birth of the idea, how can we do by collaborating much better? How can we improve data quality? And how can we be, at the end, much more effective? And then we started to work on this. And today, there is a platform in place with a consortium of, I believe, more than 12 multinational companies. Together with the CDQ AG, they mirror the data. And then the principle of this is, let's say we have 10 participants, and the overlap would be 100%, which is unusual. But if we take it as an example, each company would maintain 10% of the total business partners and would get 100% of the data maintenance and changes. In the background, CDQ AG has signed up to a number of services and has created more than 1,500 validation rules in order to ensure the data quality. So now each participant of this sharing collaboration platform is benefiting from the business rules, because the business rules can be used within the enterprise as well as on the CDQ mirroring database. So the revolutionary idea was that competing companies sit together and maintain the data of the legal entity of their business partners together by benefiting and being in a win-win situation.
Truly, as I said earlier, a revolutionary thinking in what is traditionally a very competitive landscape to collaboratively manage common entities between, in essence, competitors. I think is a fantastic story, and of course, data monetization through finding efficiencies in this way is a true example of data monetization. So I've got a couple of questions for you, actually, Karsten. We're having this interview today. We're in our homes during COVID, and during this time, many organizations had to go through what was essentially a very rapid digital transformation. So I'm really quite curious if in your views, what opportunities may have arisen through this sudden influx in digitization, and what data opportunities may have arisen during this time.
Well, first of all, what we need to accept is that COVID has forced all of us in spring of this year to rapidly change gears and change speed. Because of the lockdowns, we were not able to work out of our offices, we were not able to travel. So if we take only these two components, I'm a strong believer that the home office part will stay wherever companies can afford this. Of course, you cannot be a bus driver and doing your job from home, but any kind of office job can be done from home. So, and I think the big challenge for all these enterprises was the increase of network points to be maintained overnight. So, and I think this was a clear evidence that companies are able to rapid change. So, and as we said, this will stay. So virtual meetings will stay, and we know this. I know this from my kids. They were on the remote schooling. So universities are on remote learning. I think this will stay and go into the future, not 100%, but we will have much more of these virtual teaching and education modes than we used to have before COVID. The same is for business trips. I think a lot of business trips will be replaced by virtual meetings, which doesn't say a face-to-face meeting will not happen in the future. And this will impact a lot of industries, for example, hotel, airlines, etc. So the other point of COVID is those companies who had a quite, let's say, mature data management structure in place with a governance body benefited from the investment in the past, because they did know all their data assets much better than those companies who didn't invest in the past. They have all the definitions in place. They have run through a standardization process, which helps them if they want to support these remote working to be much faster in realizing this and do it more stable and in a more secure way.
Yeah, for sure. I think that certainly organizations are seeing the opportunity to save the real estate space and go much more digital. And as you said, the organizations that were prepared with their standardized data definitions and so on were much better able to respond. So second question, Karsten, data monetization can be interpreted in many ways. But key opportunities lie in spawning new revenue streams, identifying transformational efficiencies, much as we discussed about the Nestlé CDQ example that I spoke about earlier, or architecting innovative new business models based on their organization's managed data. In your experience, are you seeing any trends that are coming from either mature organizations that have already managed this, or even from younger organizations to monetize data on any of these three streams?
Thanks for the question, because I think it's very important to look into this, what is most probably coming up. I'm personally a strong believer in collaboration, and I think companies will realize that the amount of data they are dealing with needs to be maintained. It needs to be sorted into data which has been validated and data which has been not validated. And I strongly believe that collaboration will help us cross enterprise boundaries to manage this in a better way. The other trend I'm seeing is, if we are talking digitalization at the end of the day, for me, is an end-to-end process integration, even beyond enterprise and entity boundaries. So now if we take the example of a supplier and a customer, the supplier delivers physical goods to the customer. The supplier has already maintained the data for the physical goods in his ERP system. The customer in today's world needs to create new records and needs to key in the data which the supplier has already in his system. I believe that we can get a lot of efficiencies quite soon by working together and by sharing this data across company boundaries. So this will mean that, for example, there might come up a big change in procurement, because procurement now needs to buy not only physical goods at the lowest price per unit, Now they need to collaborate with other areas in the company in order to buy the right data at the right level of quality. On the other hand, and here are the data management teams very, very much will be supporting, because if we take the example of the supplier and the customer, teams from both sides of the fence need to sit together and need to talk about, if we are talking a certain specific data attribute, which is, for example, in an ERP system, do we have the same understanding? Do we have the same definitions? Mm-hmm. Once we are sure we have the same understanding and we have the same definitions, then we can start to interchange or share the data. So this is where the real benefit comes in from data management processes which are structured, standardized, harmonized, and under good governance.
Very interesting.
If we look a bit further out, I strongly believe that machine learning or artificial intelligence is one area which will be helped to monetize data in a different sense than people sometimes believe it, because there will not be money on the table, but it will be less money spent on the maintenance. So in my last year at Nestlé, was working on a pilot to demonstrate that machine learning can help, for example, to predict customs tariff codes or HS codes or commodity codes. The company of Bosch has implemented this on a global basis, and all the specialists which were in charge to do the manual linkage between materials which go cross-border and this tariff number, they are now working on how can we optimize with the customs authorities the right tariff, because in essence it's a bit oversimplified, but for each item which you cross-border transact, there are two tariff codes. One is the expensive one and one is the cheap one. So the importing country wants to go for the expensive one, the importing company wants to go for the cheap one. So and this is where people with the skills now can much better add value, and this for me is monetizing in data.
Absolutely agree. As in your examples, it's all about streamlining and efficiencies. Karsten, I want to thank you very much for joining DMC today, and we're looking forward to your talk on the 25th.
Thank you very much, Wade. Looking forward as well.
Thank you.